Tonight, growing concern that President Trump's blocking of the transition could threaten national security. The president ordering a significant drawdown of U.S. troops in Afghanistan and Iraq and considering a strike in Iran before President-elect Joe Biden takes office. The fears the rocky transition could leave the U.S. open to aggression. And just as the announcement is made, the rocket attack in Baghdad's green zone. Biden, meantime, receiving a national security briefing today, but not from government officials. And the moment on the Senate floor, the fist bump caught on camera, is it a sign the GOP is accepting Biden's victory? Just in, the top Republican senator, third in line to the presidency, testing positive for COVID. The staggering surge now in all 50 states. The new crackdowns, Ohio ordering a 3-week curfew, mobile morgues manned by inmates in Texas. And our interview with the U.S. testing chief, we ask why are the lines so long this far into the pandemic? Hurricane IOTA carving a deadly path after making landfall as a monster Category 4. The new trend amid the pandemic for chains like McDonald's and Chipotle. And in dark times, the holiday tradition still shining bright.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. With 64 days left in his presidency, Donald Trump's refusal to coordinate with the incoming Biden administration is taking on new and serious national security implications tonight. NBC News confirming the president, alarming his own advisors, has sought out military strike options against Iran, even as he instructs the Pentagon to start bringing troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan. While President-elect Biden, who could face the consequences of the decisions, remains shut out of critical intelligence. Andrea Mitchell has late details.
President Trump, only weeks before he leaves office, pushing for dramatic actions in Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan that could hamstring his successor's foreign policy, before even letting the president-elect have intelligence briefings. Tonight, NBC News confirming the president asked his national security cabinet about striking Iran, after UN inspectors reported Tehran was again stockpiling uranium that could be used for nuclear weapons, according to 2 senior officials, as first reported by the New York Times. But with Iran's vast military power, Vice President Pence, Joint Chiefs Chairman Milley, and even Secretary of State Pompeo, an Iran hardliner, warning it could quickly escalate into a wider war in his final days in office. Outside experts also alarmed.
Where could they hit back? At American military forces in Iraq, at American naval and air assets in the Gulf. They could try to kidnap or kill American citizens anywhere in the world. They've done that in the past.
Military experts calling the president's suggestion reckless during a transition.
It's highly irresponsible for a sitting president in the waning days of an administration to take such dramatic steps and actions.
And today, the president also taking potentially irreversible steps by pushing the Pentagon to withdraw thousands of troops from Afghanistan after ousting Defense Secretary Mark Esper last week for objecting. The acting Defense Secretary announcing a rapid troop drawdown from both Iraq and Afghanistan.
By January 15th, 2021, our forces, their size in Afghanistan will be 2,500 troops. Our force size in Iraq will also be 2,500.
Already tonight in Baghdad, Iranian-backed militias fired rockets near the green zone, killing a child and wounding 5 civilians. The president's refusal to consult his successor on national security is unprecedented in modern times, alarming experts at home and allies abroad. Lester?
All right, Andrea Mitchell, thank you. And joining us right now is Richard Engel. Richard, what's your take? Is this attack in Iraq signaling something large?
This was entirely predictable. The militia groups that carry out rocket attacks like this want to show that they won, that they defeated the United States, are driving troops out. The same thing is happening in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is claiming victory, that it defeated a superpower. This is exactly what President Trump said he would never do, that he would never telegraph to the enemy U.S. troop movements. American commanders don't want to be involved in these wars forever, but they also don't want a sloppy withdrawal that looks like defeat in the final weeks of an administration taken for political reasons. Lester.
All right, Richard Engel, thank you. And as you just heard, President-elect Joe Biden today still not getting the green light from the Trump administration to receive intelligence briefings, so his team set up its own. Kristen Welker has the latest.
Tonight, President-elect Biden trying to turn up the heat on President Trump. Today, Biden's transition team setting up a meeting with a group of national security advisors since the Trump administration is still preventing official briefings.
I've been unable to get the briefings that ordinarily would have come by now.
President Trump's former chief of staff adding to the growing chorus, saying that should change.
There's no reason not to be giving former Vice President Biden and Senator Harris the intelligence briefings.
Still, most Senate Republicans say President Trump's legal challenges to the election should be given time to play out.
All of it will happen right on time, and we'll swear in the next administration on January 20th.
Including Trump ally Lindsey Graham.
Do you think he won the election? When the court cases are over, ask me when the courts have ruled.
Graham was among those who greeted Vice President-elect Harris with a fist bump when she returned to the Senate floor today. Meanwhile, NBC News has learned from 5 people familiar with the discussions that Biden has told advisors he does not want his presidency consumed by investigations into President Trump, despite pressure from some Democrats to do exactly that. Late tonight, President Trump fired DHS cybersecurity official Chris Krebs, who said last week there was no evidence of election fraud. Trump tweeting without evidence. Krebs' report was, quote, highly inaccurate. Kristen Welker, NBC News, Wilmington, Delaware.
As we turn to the COVID crisis, new infections are increasingly significant now in every state, and many hospitals are on the brink. New restrictions are being imposed, and getting tested is becoming a challenge. Let's begin with Miguel Almaguer.
Tonight, with hospitals at a breaking point and some morgues filling fast, all 50 states across our nation now have COVID cases on the rise by at least double digits. California is in crisis again. Daily case counts doubling here in just 10 days. Long lines for testing stretch from dawn to dusk.
Los Angeles is in a very dangerous situation.
Hospitals in the nation's second largest city could be overwhelmed by Christmas if no action is taken.
And if we don't make these decisions now, we will almost certainly have to shut things down again, and more people will get sick and die.
NBC News obtaining a White House report calling the pandemic's trajectory aggressive, unrelenting, expanding. With a record 73,000 hospitalized today, on Thursday, Ohio begins a 3-week curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. More than half the nation implementing new restrictions this month.
We are in an utter emergency here.
Dr. Daniel Johnson works the ICU in Nebraska.
If we don't change the way we are living our lives, we will not get control of this.
With many getting tested so they can go home for the holidays, most doctors say it's still not safe to travel. In Mississippi, one official warned if you gather for Thanksgiving, you could be planning a funeral for Christmas.
As inmates man morgues in El Paso, our national death toll is approaching 250,000. Before John Carrillo lost his mother and father, he told his sister, who also passed away, he could not risk seeing his parents.
I can't help Dad or Mom, because if I do, I'll take the virus to my family. And I have 2 girls and a granddaughter that live with us. That hurts that I wasn't able to do more for them.
While many will beat the virus, for so many others, there is no escape from the heartbreak. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
This is Stephanie Gosk. The lines are growing from California to Wisconsin to the streets of New York City. Daily COVID testing jumped nearly 50% in the last month.
It's frustrating that we have to keep going through this.
There are labs sounding the alarm about capacity and supplies.
To have this gross shortage is really nothing like we've ever seen.
Dr. Melissa Miller runs a lab at the University of North Carolina Medical Center, working at half its capacity, she says, because of supply problems.
Sometimes we're down to waiting on the next day's shipment to be able to keep one or more of our instruments going, which is very stressful.
Quest Diagnostics, one of the country's largest labs, says its turnaround time is getting longer, the average more than 2 days. But HHS tells NBC News that supply concerns are overstated. As for those lines,
I can't give you a state-by-state answer to that. There are literally tens of thousands of places to get tests around the country, several thousand sponsored by us. And again, if those states need help, we provide personnel, we provide extra testing.
The Trump administration announced last August they were distributing 150 million new rapid tests to alleviate stress on the system, now saying just over a third have reached the states. NBC News found that at least 8 states distributed few or none at all, as recently as last week. But HHS says they are ramping up the program, and 8 million more tests will be shipped in the coming days.
This is going to take and should take and is taking much of the load off the laboratories and putting them at the point of care where people can get their results within 15 minutes.
In the meantime,
yeah, it's getting backed up pretty bad.
People are waiting. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
The economic impact of the pandemic has been devastating, and with no new relief in sight, it will only get worse. Gabe Gutierrez now with more on what's holding it up.
While the stock market is surging, many small businesses are not. What is the hardest part about having to lay that many people off?
Deciding. Deciding is the hardest part, because there's no one I would let go right now.
James Malios, who owns 3 restaurants in New York, is hemorrhaging money.
I don't know how I'm going to look any of them in the eye and explain why we might have to let some of them go.
On Capitol Hill, coronavirus stimulus talks have stalled. Several other crucial measures will expire by the end of the year. Extra unemployment insurance, the eviction moratorium, as well as state and local funding, which could put public safety jobs like police officers and firefighters at risk. Though House Democrats have passed their own bill, they refuse to accept a smaller package that Senate Republicans have offered. What would your message be to Congress?
Get off your ass.
Also caught in the middle of the political squabbling is furloughed hotel worker Marianne Silva in Boston.
Federal government needs to step in and help the hospitality workers that are worried about their car payment, their food. This is desperate, desperate times.
Her unemployment insurance runs out in 4 weeks.
What do I do after 4 weeks? It's a constant worry every day.
Here in New York City, a survey found that 9 out of 10 bars and restaurants couldn't pay their full rent last month. Lester?
Says a lot. All right, Gabe, thank you. As Europe confronts its own staggering numbers, many countries are placing new importance on keeping schools open rather than restaurants and bars. Here's Keir Simmons with that.
After closing classrooms in the spring, many European countries chose to prioritize schools this fall. In Paris, the Lippert family's teenage son, Jake, is back at school this week after a 2-week closure from a COVID outbreak.
Like the track and trace procedure that my school put in place to contact anyone who had been in contact with someone who was infected, I believe that has worked. It's a huge relief.
Schools that correctly implement 5 key strategies, including social distancing and hand hygiene, see less than 3% positive tests over 2 weeks, according to the CDC, while schools that have no strategies at all have an infection rate of more than 10%. In London, at this elementary school, they've reorganised classrooms.
You're out there in the hall, and tell me how that works.
Okay, so we've got a one-way system with signage so the kids all know where to go.
For the students, it's good to be back.
I feel happy at school.
Many countries have prioritised closing bars, restaurants and hotels first, while compensating workers. Even so, Europe faces a long winter that may yet force home learning on many families. Tonight, Austria's schools are closed. Lester?
All right, Keir Simmons tonight, thank you. The remnants of Hurricane IOTA are causing damaging winds and catastrophic rains across Central America after the most powerful storm of the year tore through Nicaragua as a Category 4 hurricane. At least 4 deaths have been reported. In just 60 seconds, our series, America Under Pressure, the serious impact of anxiety and depression on teens as many struggle through the pandemic, what parents need to know. Back now with our week-long focus on mental health challenges during the pandemic. Tonight, the impact on teens and one family hoping to keep others from suffering the same tragedy they have. Morgan Radford now with America Under Pressure.
It was the call that changed their lives. Just 4 days before his 13th birthday, Brad and April Hunstable's son, Hayden, died by suicide.
It was the middle of the lockdown in April, and he had broken his monitor that he got for Christmas. He broke it on accident, kind of getting mad, We went in the kitchen, and I hugged him, kissed him on the head.
That was the last time he saw Hayden.
I might have missed about a minute from saving him. It was this close.
His death, Brad says, was a casualty of COVID.
You said that you felt if your son had still been in school, he would still be alive. Do you still feel that way?
100%. COVID is a terrible thing, and I don't want to discount that. Human condition is not meant to be socially isolated. It's just not. 1, 2, 3.
Just 2 days after he buried his son, Brad made a video now viewed more than 100 million times.
Tried.
Warning other parents of the hidden dangers of COVID.
I want nobody ever to see what I saw, to feel this pain.
Why did you all decide to speak publicly about your pain?
Suicide is a very, I don't know, there's a stigma. I lost my dad to suicide, so it's always been a very painful subject. Yeah, I just think it's important to let people know that it's okay to show your feelings about it and not be ashamed.
In September, one report found that more than half of the kids surveyed had thoughts of suicide or self-harm. In fact, 11 to 17-year-olds have been more likely than any other age group to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression during the pandemic, which is why the Hunsables created Hayden's Corner, a nonprofit aimed at helping parents navigate mental health challenges.
To have the conversation about suicide, even if your kid is not suicidal, parents can't even fathom.
No, you don't think it'll happen to you for sure.
You don't want to feel this pain.
Experts say parents should be aware of behavioral and personality changes. If a child becomes more irritable or withdrawn for longer than 2 weeks or talks about dying, they should reach out for help.
This is not political. This is parental.
What would you say to other parents to give them hope?
Just got to keep going forward. You can't give up because they wouldn't want that for you.
In memory of Hayden, Morgan Radford, NBC News, Aledo, Texas.
And if you or someone you know needs help, the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. And we appreciate the Hunsables sharing their story. We'll be right back. After a nearly 30-hour journey, the Spacex Crew Dragon has reached its destination. The capsule docking overnight, delivering 4 astronauts to the International Space Station, which they will call home for the next 6 months. Back here on Earth, some large restaurant chains are finding a new way to adapt to the pandemic. Vicki Nguyen with what could be the future of dining.
One of the great tourist attractions in New York City is the Automat.
You could say the Automat restaurant, popular in the 1950s, pioneered contactless dining long before COVID. Customers serving themselves from a wall of pickup windows. But now, with 100,000 restaurants closed permanently or long-term over the last 6 months, the pandemic is forcing many to evolve for consumer safety and preference. Chipotle announcing its first digital kitchen. No dining room, no one at the counter taking orders. You have to order in advance using the Chipotle app and then go pick up your food. Or you can get it delivered. To eat at home or wherever you want, just not in the restaurant. McDonald's launched a similar concept in London, and Chick-fil-A and Qdoba are also trying the ghost kitchen food-only concept to cut down on labor and dining room costs.
Restaurants were already headed in a digital direction. COVID accelerated things, and it accelerated them by a lot.
But for restaurants that provide an actual dining experience, going digital isn't a long-term fix. The large chains are best positioned to benefit, and time will tell if the changes are here to stay. Vicki Nguyen, NBC News.
And up next, a symbol of the season and of renewed hope.
NBC Nightly News is brought to you by WeatherTech. Auto, home, pet. Find your fit with WeatherTech.
Finally tonight, in any other year, it would be a welcome and familiar sign of the season. But this year, there's more to it. Here's Harry Smith.
This morning on the Today Show, we saw it, if only for a moment, a glimpse of the star atop the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. Funny how a thing not even lit yet could cheer us up. It reminds us, through years thick and thin, there's been a Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center. The first, put up in 1931, the depths of the Great Depression. Workers, thankful to have jobs building the great complex, pooled their money to buy the 20-footer. This year, perhaps more than others, many of us feel we really need the tree. All of the loss, the anxiety, the pressure of making things work, making ends meet. The tree will bring welcome light, and though darkness will give way but for a few weeks, we will gaze and dream, like those workers years ago, of better days ahead. Harry Smith, NBC News, New York.
We'll get there. Thanks, Harry. That's Nightly News for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please continue to take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.